I can picture the room. I can picture how I was laying down. I can picture everything about that dorm. And when those words popped up on my phone, and it was a surreal thing, and it was a scary thing, just because it was like I didn't know, because I didn't know what I did wrong. Like I didn't know what I did wrong by telling him I just wanted to leave.
Mhm. Coach Lawrence, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm looking forward to this episode. This episode, we're going to be tackling athlete mental health. You were a former athlete, currently a coach. And so you get two different sides of what athlete mental health means to you and seeing it on the coaching level. I want to dive into our conversation today, just reflecting on your time as a D1 track athlete. Can you talk about personal struggles with wanting to transfer schools and how it led to almost leaving the sport? And to give listeners and viewers context, I know you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, and you were kind of giving me the backstory of your experience as an athlete and wanting to transfer. So, can you dive into just your personal struggle with wanting to transfer schools and how it almost led to you leaving the sport?
My struggle with leaving the school was really Iowa was basically my home. It was my home away from home. Growing up in Dayton, Ohio, and then basically, I mean, I'm still kind of a kid, and then really the first time I'm away from my parents, family, had to make new friends, and everything was in Iowa. So I grew up basically like growing up as a man in Iowa. So really everything that I know about like people, I really learned from Iowa, and making the decision to leave was really based on like just my social life outside of track, and then what happened on the track that year and how I was feeling. And then also my parents, I got into like a little bad accident. So I wanted to go closer to them. And I would say it helped. It was really hard with like, just because I had a bad season that year. And I was just really thinking like, I don't really know. I mean, like this is my last year. Really? I mean, do I even take another COVID year, or what do I really do? And the struggle was just like, it was really like, is the grass greener on the other side? Like, do I stay, thug it out another year? Or do I just get up, find a new, basically like recenter myself? And I picked somewhere else because it was somewhere where I didn't know anybody. So I was forcing myself to recenter that. And then just thinking about like, should I continue the sport, it's the injury part. Like I've never been injured before while running. And those last couple years, the last 2-ish years, really around when COVID hit, is when the injuries just started to stack. And as somebody that never really got hurt before, it's just okay. I don't really know how much more I can make all this progress, get hurt, have to go back 50 steps just to regain 50 steps. I don't really want to
Mhm.
keep doing that. So I really struggle with like, is this going to be my last year, or do I just refocus somewhere else? And then I
Mhm.
ended up choosing refocusing somewhere else.
You know, it's interesting how you talked about it as far as kind of getting caught up in the lifestyle specifically with going out, tailgating, et cetera, which for athletes, sometimes it's like you are so wrapped up in your sport from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed. And so being able to experience or indulge in some of those things, like, man, this is what life is kind of like, having fun
Yeah.
outside of always being centered around the sport. So when you experience those things, indulging in the lifestyle, then coming to terms with, hey, I'm going to go ahead and center myself somewhere else. How did that impact relationships with coaches or teammates once you said, hey, you know what, I'm going to transition and go to somewhere else?
I would say it was more impactful on the coaches. The coaches, it's hard because it's like you really know, or you like see how coaches see you when you decide that you want to transfer. Like some coaches will, I know some coaches will. Okay, if that's your decision, we'll accept it. We'll help you however we can for you to move on comfortably to your new school. And then you have other coaches that will fight and push back on you. Hey, just stay here. It wouldn't really be good of you to go here. That school is bad. Would you that type of thing? And I think it shows how much coaches really see you as a person and then an athlete. And I would say that affected things more than just me like telling my friends like, "Hey, I'm transferring," because everybody was like, "Okay, if that's what you want to do, then do that. We just hope that you're making the right decision and we support you in it." But as the coaches, it's like you don't really know which coach you're going to get. Like you know your coach while you're there competing underneath them. But then when it's time for you to up and leave, or you make the decision to up and leave, then it's like you really know the coach and you see like true colors and how they really thought of you. Like if they thought of me as like a person, like even if I was to stay and then I need help after school, like are they seeing me as a person? Like, hey, we can help you. I know connects in the city. I can help you get a job. Or you see me as an athlete where I've done what I could for the school. I've done what I could for you. Won championships, things of that nature. And now that I'm done, it's you don't even know me anymore.
Mhm.
So I would say like my it it hurt more on my connections with the coaches than my friends and fellow athletes.
You often hear, at least in my experiences with working with athletes within, the mental health space, you often hear athletes say, "Well, this coach really didn't care about me. This coach only cared about what I did on the track, on the field, on the court." Similar to your experience, you don't, like, as you mentioned, you don't really know which coach is for you and which coach is kind of against you.
Yeah.
I know in our previous conversation, you spoke about that transition and you had a specific coach that told you you may not ever run again. Without providing any names, can you explain a little bit more what that experience was like and just once you even heard those words about somebody telling you you might not ever run again?
It was before the transfer portal was even a thing. So before, if people watching don't know, before you now where you could just tell a coach, "Hey, I want to transfer," and they send you to compliance. You watch a couple videos, accept. Do you really want to do this? Yes, you press accept, and now you're in the portal. Before you had to get released. You had to get released from the school. You had to go talk to the coaches. You had to do all this stuff. You had to talk to them. They had to release you. They had to make sure everything was paid off, everything like that. The school that I first went to, I only stayed there for a week, and I just ended up leaving because I just wasn't comfortable. Like I just wasn't comfortable in the school, the area. So I told the coach that I wanted to leave, and I remember the night before I had got a bus ticket. Me and my dad salvaged up money to give me a bus ticket, and packed everything up in the dorm. And before I left that night, I got a text from the coach, and he was like, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And I was like, "Yes, this is what I want to do." And then he sent me back a text. Okay, well, this might be the last time you ever run college track. And for me, all I knew was track in my life. Like my parents ran it, my sister ran it. All I know is track, and it scared me to the point where I called my dad literally that night. Was on the phone with him till like 2 in the morning, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm making a mistake or if I'm not. Like, I don't know if should I leave or should I stay, because he just told me that I might not run track again. I don't really know what that means. I just know I want to run track somewhere. And then my dad just told me, he basically calmed me down and was like, that's not gonna happen. I'll make sure of it. And my dad was also my high school coach, so I kind of put all my trust when it comes to track into him. And he just told me to pack up, be confident in your decision, and go home and come home. And since then, I haven't really spoke to that coach. We don't really speak, but it was still hearing those words. It was just like, wow, this is kind of crazy that I was just told this. Like, I've only been here for a week, and I just wasn't comfortable where I was at. I just wasn't comfortable, and I don't know. To this day, it kind of scares me just because there are coaches that will do like things like that, and it kind of hurts the pride of a kid because I was shattered. Like I didn't know. I literally didn't know if I would run anymore. Like I was like, I think this might be it. Like I think I probably just made the worst decision in my life. I should have never said that I wanted to leave. I should have just stayed and stuff like that. And it was kind of scary. I would say those words will that night. It's like one of those things where you hear a song and every time, but that song is attached to something bad. So every time you hear the song, you picture the bad thing that happened during that song. Every time I can picture the room. I can picture how I was laying down. I can picture everything about that dorm. And when those words popped up on my phone, they would
Mhm.
never leave me. And it was a surreal thing, and it was a scary thing, just because it's like I didn't know, because I didn't know what I did wrong. Like I didn't know what I did wrong by telling him I just wanted to leave.
Mhm. Now, I was just thinking about this because you mentioned the transfer portal. Knowing how the transfer portal works now, where it seems like there's a little bit more flexibility for athletes to leave a school, but you got a lot of money involved now.
Yeah,
And there have been a lot of stories that have come out to where athletes are guaranteed a specific amount of money or guaranteed a specific spot, and then when they get to the position, either they're not getting all of the money that they were guaranteed, or they're not getting that starting role that they were guaranteed as well. So when you talk about those words have stuck with you, maybe haunted you, thinking about all of the other athletes that go through similar experiences to where those words have an effect and an impact on just the longevity of one athlete's career, but then also once you leave the sport. And so I want to dive more into this athlete mental health, because you've shared with me in previous conversations where you've competed at the high level, D1 track star, and a lot of people look on the outside sometimes think, well, the athlete, they have it all. They got tuition, they've got food. How could they be struggling? So can you speak on the dangerous or toxic behaviors you saw with other athletes and how it impacted either your own mental health or your own well-being or team culture?
yeah. Going to my next school, I was more like I'm coming off of being told I probably would never run track again. So already with that, like I'm at this my new school with my new coaches. Yeah, I trust them, but I don't really trust them because at this point, my first, I would say my first like involvement with a track coach was a coach telling me I probably wouldn't run anymore, and they weren't even at the same like level as the school I was going to. Like the school I'm going to now is a Power Five, and I know they're more strict over here. So when I got in, I was really like I didn't really talk to anybody. I mean, I'm a red shirt, so everything's going on, season's going on. I'm staying home every week. Still got to get used to the workouts. When I first got to school, it was I didn't know school. I didn't know what college was because I was only at my other school for like a week. I went to two classes, left. This I'm trying to figure out a bus schedule, trying to figure out my own schedule. Don't know where classrooms are. Don't know how to go from the classrooms to the facility. Don't know anybody.
Mhm.
And all these things are like every day I wake up. Every day I was waking up in my dorm, and I'm taking deep breaths. I'm tired. I'm like I don't really know if I want to do it. I remember the first week at my new school. I called my dad and I told him I don't think I want to run track anymore. I think I just want to go home. And this is like after a week of first practice. I'm getting my beat in 200s. I'm lagging behind. I'm dying. I'm like, yeah. My mental just wasn't really there the first couple weeks. Truly, the first whole like semester I was there. I didn't know about actual studying. I didn't know how to like actually study. I didn't know about like what I was reading and stuff like that. I didn't know how hard classes were. Like I failed a whole bunch of classes my first semester there. I was just like, oh man, I don't really want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. I don't want to run track. And I didn't know about therapy or anything like that. I didn't know like schools had psychologists that talk to you and have certain like for sports and stuff like that. I didn't know that. So I'm going through it, and every day I'm going through it. I'm talking to my dad. I'm talking to my dad through it. Me and him are. He's just like, Wayne, just got to stick through it. Just got to get through it. Got to get through it. Talk to my coach. He's like, don't worry, I'm gonna make sure you're okay and stuff like that. And then on that other side, I have other people that are redshirting with me, and they're just like they're thinking the same thing I'm thinking. Like, man, this is hard. Like, we don't know what to do. So now it's a bunch of us. We all got the same mindset with no outlet but each other. So I'm speaking my badness to another person with another badness, and they speaking their badness
Mhm.
to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is real bad. There's
Yeah, yeah.
there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Like we're doomed right now. And then on the other side of it, you're going to meets and you're watching people compete and make nationals, and these are things that you wanted to do and stuff like that. And they're traveling every week, and you're still at school, like going to classes, workouts by yourself, and you sit. And that's another mental thing that you got to take in, because you're supposed to be this. I think that the title of how you're supposed to be, like if you're coming in on a big scholarship and you're supposed to be a point scorer for the teams, you're supposed to help the team win ACC championships or Big 12 championships or Big 10 championships, but you're not being able to do that. That takes a toll on you, because then you start to think about your identity in the sport and how everybody else sees you in the sport. Like, oh, this guy has all this big money, but he's not doing anything, and I'm over here on 35%, and I'm busting my ass every day, but he's not doing anything. He's like, what's going on? And that's really how I thought about it. So I went through the first semester, didn't talk to really anybody other than the red shirts, was pushing it, being one of those kids that's like and I have a chip to prove. I have something to prove, but nobody has ever came to me and told me that I couldn't do it at this new school. I'm basing this all off of what I was told before. So everybody's looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with him? Like, we're trying to be nice, and he's acting like, oh, well,
Mm.
I didn't know how to express what I had went through before. So I'm just going in here like everybody's the same. I'm thinking all colleges are the same, all coaches are the same. They don't really care about you. They just want you here to do this. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go pro. I'm gonna leave. And then it hit me again. I kind of got through it a little bit, kind of worked through it. I'm like, okay, just trying to be mentally tough. And then at the end of the semester, grades were just terrible. And I'm like, so this is another thing now I got to deal with. And then they were talking about I couldn't go home for the summer, and I'm like, oh no, 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 this can't be a thing. So now I got to stay here again in the like what? So that was another toll on me, because I'm like, okay, now like I'm a kid. I got to go see my family. I haven't seen them in a long time. I can't stay here. So me and my coach batted on that a little bit. They ended up allowing me to go home. I came back, and I think when I came back that summer, later in the summer, that's when I really got to this. My mental kind of loosened up. I kind of got to see the team for what it was, and I got to meet people and actually like engage in conversations and stuff like that with people. So it helped my mental. But then as the season got through it, because I knew what type of athlete I was, I knew I was a good athlete.
Mhm.
I knew I was a good athlete. Season comes, I'm finally like I'm in fall training now. I didn't skip a fall training. I'm in fall training. I'm training good and things of that nature. But then I have my friends that I met through being a red shirt. Like, I'm really close with them. They aren't having such a good fall season. So, and we're still talking and stuff like that throughout the season, and they're asking like, hey, how are you adapting, and how do I adapt and stuff like that. And I'm trying to tell them, hey, I'm telling them it's so cliche, and I would say on ignorant on my part, because at the time I didn't really think mental health was like a big issue within sports. I'm thinking like, bro, just toughen that out. Like, come on, just be tough. Like that's what track is. It's just mental. Nah, it's more than like mental. It's more than mental, and that's what I was
Mhm.
telling them.
Yep.
It's like, bro, you just got to go out there and do it. Like, you just got to go out there and push yourself. Tell yourself you're not tired. Tell yourself this doesn't hurt,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you'll be straight.
That makes me think though, like that point that you said is it's more there's more to it than just going out there and competing. Do you find in your experiences with the number of schools that you've been to, did coaches place more of an emphasis on the performance piece and forgot about or didn't even talk about the mental health piece of things?
Yeah, I think because they think that they coexist when in actuality they don't. They're two different things. So a lot of coaches will say, "You just got to have a mental. You just gotta be a dog. You got to be a dog. You got to have that dog mindset." Well, somebody can be a dog and something really be tearing them up outside of track, and
Hmm.
just because they're lacking outside of that doesn't mean that they're not a dog. They don't necessarily go together. And as as you're a freshman and you're new, that's what you're kind of taught. Like, oh yeah, you just got to be a dog. If you're a dog, you're gonna be good. That's it. If you're a dog, you're gonna go through these workouts. It's a main thing where like you hear a lot in athletics is that practice is harder than competition. Like if you can get through practice, you can get through any competition. All that type of stuff. And as a freshman or underclassman, you don't really understand that part until like you're older, like until you're a couple years into it. Like, bro, this stuff is really hard. Like, this is not just a you gotta be mentally strong. Like, no, these things tear you down. Like
Hmm.
my coach at Kentucky, he always told me that athletes or track and field specifically, like our bodies aren't meant to do what we push them to do. That's why it hurts so much. It's more than like just be a dog. Like it's gonna hurt, and a lot of people say in track and field, like you got to be like insane to want to be good at track because it just hurts. It's a naturally hurt thing. But on top of your body hurting, you have other stressors in life to worry about: social life, school, people, your family. Like something can come up with your family and that can tear you up on the track. But a coach doesn't know that. And now they're gonna tell you is, bro, you just gotta be mentally strong. You just gotta push through it. Push through it. I know this workout hurts. When necessarily it's not even a workout. It's something totally different. Totally different.
So I think that's one of the things that, as far as like, and I've got so many questions because I'm thinking about these things. You can be a dog. Like I love what you just said. You can be a dog and have something completely outside of sports be tearing you up. And the mentality of just fight through it, just work through it, just be a dog. And thinking about how destructive that way of thinking can sometimes be on an athlete, especially if an athlete's injured. And I know we talked about in our previous conversation athletes being injured and afraid to speak up about what they were going through. Can you speak a little bit on that? Because I think that is really, really important in this
It's
conversation.
it comes down to like I said, that title as an athlete when they come in. So like going through recruiting, you get recruited. You get recruited to do a certain thing. Like if you're, let's say, for example, New Balance All American, you've been to AAU Nationals, you've been all around. You've been all around. Travel in high school, most high schools don't really travel across states, but if you're a high school and you're big high school, traveling and all that. So you're a big name. You've been to a couple campuses, couple Power Fives, SECs, Big Tens, Big 12s. And then you come in and this coach sits you down and they tell you, hey, we're going to spend this much on you. We're going to give you a full ride. You don't have to worry about it. We believe that you could be a point scorer. And a point scorer in the SEC is a big, big thing. When I mean it's a big thing, it's like most people, if you're a point scorer as a freshman, and when I mean point scorer, I mean like top 5 point scorer as a freshman. Oh, you might be going pro for sure. Like that's guaranteed. You might be going pro. I mean, at every big Power Five conference is different, but SEC, since that was the highest I've competed at, I'll speak on that. It's just the SEC is just a different breed of here. It's such a different breed of here. It is insane, and I didn't really notice it until I got in it. Because even as a seasoned vet, I'm just like, bro, this is not this is tough. Like this is hard work. Like even Big Ten, it was hard. But it's like Big Ten, you kind of got a lot of people that you can talk to and stuff like that. Like you can talk to your friends, you can talk to your coaches a little. You can talk to people. SEC, it's cutthroat. It's like that mental aspect. If you're not a dog, if it's either it's like you're weak or you're strong. That's how they think about it there. It's either you're weak or you're strong. It's either you built for it or you just not. And I'm just like, that's not even how that goes. Like that's not an actual thing. Like some people are
Yeah.
built for it, but go through things and it can make them seem weak, but they're not really that weak. Like I've seen people scared to talk to coaches and Wayne, I don't really know. Like I'm kind of hurt, but I'm like, bro, say something. Like me, I'm never gonna not say nothing. I'm gonna say something for sure. Like I've been through it enough to where I've been through it to where I've not said anything, and then when I've gotten hurt, it's like, damn, I probably should have said something, because then I let the team down and stuff like that. But like I said, it all goes back to that name, because there are people that are in the SEC that if they're hurt, they don't really care, because I mean, I wasn't really projected to do anything. But if you're a big name and everybody's projecting you to score to win, and something come up and you're hurt, your foot's killing you, your hamstring hurts, you low key don't want to say a thing. You don't want to say a thing because you want to go out there and you want to compete. It's the pressure of competing and winning that I think a lot of coaches put over just the mental health aspect, because everybody thinks that you can toughen it through. Like nothing is really wrong with you. It's all in your head. Those are the main things that track athletes hear. It's all in your head. They don't really want to say you're faking it because they don't want to. They don't want to say, okay, he's faking it or she's faking it. But they say it's in your head. Nothing's really wrong with you. Just go out there and run and you'll be fine and stuff like that. And I'm just like, this is insane. It's just kind of crazy. And it's not even just, it's like, it goes beyond just the conference itself. It goes to the school itself. Like some schools are more strict on it than others. Like I know a kid and hamstring was hurting and he still ran. And he was limping, like obviously limping. Like you could see the limp. You could see the limp. Just strained his hamstring to a point where like he thought he tore it. And then the next week it's regionals and he's running. And I don't mean like running just his event. He's running everything. I'm just like, bro, I'm praying in the stands like, bro, please finish a race. Please just finish.
And that's like the when we talk about culture, a team culture, and you have an athlete who is big name, it's like injuries don't even exist sometimes. It's like you got to get on this track because we need 10, 15, 20, 30 points out of you. And the thing that always confuses me as somebody who has coached, as somebody who has been an athlete, and now somebody who is a licensed therapist, having these conversations with athletes, I'm thinking in my head, how can coaches not see that this is almost a detriment to their team if you're putting athletes out there, especially star athletes that are injured? And I think it's almost kind of the mentality of win right now instead of like, hey, we're building this. This is a marathon. And maybe that's the pressure of some of these bigger programs that bring in so much money is you have to produce and you have to win now at any cost. And one of my next questions I'm thinking of, because I want to tap on this, is how much, and we talked about this in a previous episode or previous conversation, how much does race play into this? Because I know you've been at schools where athletes of color is just like, you're an athlete, anything outside of that, we don't care about you. So can you speak on how maybe athletes of color have been treated in these spaces and why maybe it's so hard for athletes of color to speak up about mental health?
I would say it's not a lot of color inside of those spaces for athletes to go to. I mean, like even in coaching, you'd be surprised. Most of the African American coaches, they know each other. They know each other. They go to meets and they see each other. They speak. And it's not like they speak like a hey, how you doing? It's a speak like they grew up together. Like they sit, they joke, they do all those type of things. Whereas if they were to go up to another coach, coach of a different color, of a different race, it's more of like a hey, how you doing? This is more formal. And just within the coaching space, there's not a lot of color representation, and that goes to show like okay, it has to be smaller within that therapeutic space as well. And that's one thing I learned at Iowa. When I first got there, I went through, I would say, what year was it? My sophomore year. So redshirted my freshman year, and then my actual competing freshman year, I was that year. So that year went to around Big Ten's outdoors. I was dealing with a girl, and it ended bad, terrible, burnt up in flames. And this is like my first relationship since like high school. And high school, you got your relationships are more like mom and dad is a lot involved and stuff like that. Like you asking if you can go to the movies and stuff like that. Here, since I'm in college, I don't really have my parents. I'm moving like I'm married. I'm oh snap, I ain't really gotta ask nobody. So I'm just going to the movies and shit. I'm hanging out, I'm eating dinner and stuff. And then it just all happened to end. And since it was my first relationship in college, that hurt me mentally. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to turn to, anything like that. And this was around Big Tens. So I'm like, I'm trying to lock in, but I can't really lock in. Like I'm still thinking, like I'm all up in my head. And I remember going to a psychologist, talking to her, and I only talked to her one time, white woman. She was very nice, but I just didn't feel comfortable enough to go back. I only talked to her one time, and after I talked to her, I just sat in my room and I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm not going back. I'm okay. I don't need to go back. I'm okay."
Hmm.
And it's like those spaces you don't really. It's not that they're. It's just when you don't see something that's normal or that looks like you, it's hard to open up to it. And now Iowa has a black therapist. Her name is Dr. Cole, very lovely woman, love her. I've talked to her more, and I've talked to her just to talk to her, like, hey, how you doing? She's helped me even after I've left school. Iowa, she's helped me, love that. I don't know, it's kind of weird. And when I moved in as a coach, you see it the same, but then it's just deeper because they don't really. An African American athlete would go to an African American coach before they go to anybody else because it's just something that they're used to. They're not comfortable with sharing or opening up to anybody else. So when I coached, the kids came to me. Hey, coach, can I talk to you? Yeah, you can talk to me. Like, what's going on? Hey, coach, I'm going through this. Can I talk to you? Yeah, we'll see. We'll talk after. We'll talk after practice. And then when I transferred from Iowa, I didn't really talk to psychologists. I didn't really get into it there, really, just because for me, I was just like, I'm only going to be here for a year, and I'm already trying to be here, so I'm not gonna push myself anywhere out there. But I don't really know too much about their program. I would only know about the program that I was with for like 4 years. But there wasn't really much representation for an African American student to feel comfortable to go to anybody. So it's like, how do you expect athletes to open up? And then when they do open up to some coaches just tell them, like I said, it's all in your head. You're fine. You'll be okay, and things of that nature. If a coach talks a little bit with them, okay, now their coach is being a little too close. We can't have that. Got to send them to the psychologist. That's what they're there for. But the athletes themselves don't feel comfortable enough to go there. So athletes are boxed a little bit in most spaces just because they can't go to anybody. And then they start to surround themselves by other African American students that aren't athletes. And not saying that that's a bad thing, but when you go to like centers or Afro houses and things of that nature, that's where most athletes, you would be surprised how many athletes share their thoughts, not with psychologists, but with communities of people, not really people that are licensed to help them, just people that will just the people with the same color as them.
Hmm.
And that's what I've noticed. Like a lot of African American kids will join like a fraternity just so they can speak, just so they can like feel like they can voice themselves outside of track. Because most coaches either are too busy to listen, can't or don't really have the time, or just think that, I mean, you're not going through anything any different than anybody else. So,
Hmm.
so
That's really interesting as far as athletes not feeling safe talking to somebody who doesn't look like them. And I remember just as far as like coaching, a lot of the athletes who did look like me, they would come to me, talk to me about a formerly incarcerated parent, substance abuse, domestic violence in relationships, all of these things. And the thing that in my current role is athletes talk about, well, if I go to this person, will they even understand the culture? Will they even understand why I'm sending money back home to pay for a cousin's light bills or for a cousin or a mom, dad, et cetera, to get gas? And I think a lot of times that is something that is missed, is like having the understanding of the culture and how we do things sometimes a little bit differently than another culture or another race. And the other piece you mentioned is just coaches sometimes not having the time. I'll also add in not having the whereabouts of how to speak on mental health and or open up space for an athlete just to express themselves. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times you have, and I can speak on this because I've been in the coaching space where you have a lot of coaches with ego. And it's like
Mhm.
my way or the highway. Don't come to me talking about, hey, I need this or I need that or my hamstring or this or that. It's like, no, you're here for one reason. It's that's to run track. And you start thinking about what kind of culture does that set for the team. In a lot of cases, it's not a very healthy environment, which then hinders the overall sometimes success of the team. You're in coaching now. What things do you do to make sure that your athletes feel supported mentally and emotionally?
I'm just trying to. I really, because I've been through it. I know how it feels. I've competed at that level. Like you said, I really just want to be active. I think that most programs where coaches allow the athletes to navigate communication with other athletes is where though within those programs, that's where coaches lose the that, like you said, that space for athletes to open up. Coaches that involve themselves in team communication, team events, those type of things, it allows the athletes to feel safer with you and open up more. So that's kind of what I want to involve. Like that's kind of how I move as a coach. When I was coaching, I let the kids know, like, well, one, I'm not 45, I'm not 60, I'm not 50. I literally just graduated college. I'm the same as you guys. If anything, I know how you guys move. I know what you guys are going through more than anybody. Like I just had to write papers. Didn't feel like writing them. Was up until 2 a.m. Then I had to get up for practice, dead tired, and then go practice and try to compete at a high level. I understand that. I know how it feels to have your hamstring hurting and still have to go out there and try to run, figure out a way to get to the finish line. I understand that. And I think that alone and letting kids know that you also have been through it, you know what it's like, that helps kids open up. I told the kids that think of me as like an older brother that is like coaching you, not a father, not anything like that. I'm not your dad. You don't no, I'm not your dad. I'm more of like an older brother that is helping you. I understand. And I think when coaches put that emphasis that, hey, they understand, like I understand what you guys are going through, then that opens up that realm of, okay, now I can talk to him because he'll understand me. Like he won't just see me as an athlete that has to do everything right. No, you have the room to mess up. You have the room to grow as well. And I think that's what kind of what I want to do. Just involve myself more and let them know, like, as an athlete, I drank before. So I'm not gonna expect you to not go drink. Like I've drank. If you I drank, I've went out, I've partied, I've done all of that. I've had bad practices because I went out and partied the day before. Like I understand all of this. This isn't anything new. And I think where kids lose that willingness to go and express themselves to coaches is when coaches put that stigma of you can't do this, you can't do that. And then on top of that, they're not involved in team operation as much as, okay, we're gonna do game night or every Thursday we're gonna meet and we're gonna talk and this and stuff like that. When coaches put it upon athletes to do it with other athletes instead of them controlling it, then athletes will go to other athletes before they go to a coach because that's
Mm,
just they're in. So a athlete, yes, an athlete could be hurting, and because she hasn't really, the coach doesn't really talk to her like that, or the coach doesn't really say anything or want to have meetings or anything like that. The athlete isn't going to be feel safe enough to, hey, coach, I've been feeling like this. There's a lot's been going on with my family and stuff like that. The athlete would rather go to other student athletes, and then it kind of hurts when the student athlete when they start clashing with each other, and then that student athlete doesn't have that student athlete to go to. Now that athlete doesn't have a coach or an athlete to go to. So now they're just stuck they're stuck on a team and they feel like they're by themselves. And that hurts a lot because, okay, now I can't go to the people, I can't go to the person that recruited me to be here. And then I can't go to the people that I met when I got here, the people that are closest to me. So now I have to go and I got to meet with another person who that doesn't look like me, doesn't know anything about me, don't know what she'll say about me, don't know how she'll think of me or anything like that. That puts athletes in a box, and it's hard for them to get out of that. And it will take an athlete literally destroying themselves completely, losing themselves just for a coach or somebody to be like, "Oh, damn, we should have seen how this person was moving and stuff like that." That's why I always want to stay, me as a coach, I want to stay involved. I want to stay, okay, we're going to do this. Everybody is going to be here. We're going to do this together. You're not doing it by yourself. You're not warming up by yourself. You're not doing that. You're going to go out there. You got to talk. Because there's a lot of, like, as an athlete, like, you know, because you were an athlete too, there's a lot of times when you can just, when you warming up, you sit and you chat. You just chat about life. When you're in the locker room, you just chat about life. Going home, going to dining hall, you're just chatting about life. When those things get taken from an athlete, they feel like they're just there by themselves, like they're in a room full of people and it's just them. It's just them. There's nobody to talk to. And then when you have a coach that walks past you every day, y'all meet at the same time every day, but they don't say anything to you. They only say something to you when there's probably a recruit on campus and they try to make the coach look good, or the AD coming through and he trying to make himself look good, or they had a meet and you finally do something good when they weren't expecting you to do it, and then you do something good and they all of a sudden out the blue high five you. Good job. You don't even know you haven't talked to me since I got on campus. Like,
Mhm.
so it loses it. All of that together can get to an athlete. Like, there are so many things that I don't think people understand that athletes have to go through, and it's changed through generations. Where even there are some people that have been athletes had went through it, but think that it's non-existent anymore. When in terms, it's gotten worse. Is it's a thing that as a coach I kind of saw, and as an athlete, and I just want to change it. I just want to change it. And it also, I mean, it goes back to my dad. My dad was my coach, and he was very involved. I mean, of course, he's my dad, so he was very involved in just like what I was doing in school, who I was hanging around, and how I was feeling about workouts and stuff like that. Like, me and my dad talked about almost anything. It was to a point where me and my dad could argue about a workout. Like, I just don't think that's working for me, and he would tell me why it is, and I would tell him why I don't think it is. And I think even that communication allowed us to build a space to where I could talk to my dad about my life outside of track. Because I'm one of those people that I hate bringing track outside of track. I want track to stay within track. So when something outside of track is affecting my on track, my dad can come up to me and, Wayne, what's going on? I'll tell him. My mom will come up to me, Wayne, what's going on? And I'll tell her. And there are athletes that don't talk to their parents about track, about how they're performing and stuff like that. Their parents will come to meets and they will hide from their parents. There's people like that. There are people that will hide from their coaches as well as their parents after a race, because they just aren't comfortable. They just don't feel like they have a space to go through to where they can voice themselves. I think it's all about allowing a kid that's growing up and gonna make mistakes and also gonna learn from those mistakes to feel like they can grow and they can voice themselves. You guys can also come to me because I won't judge you. I have no room to judge you because I've probably done the same thing that you did 3 times, 3 times more. When you don't have coaches that think like that, or when you don't have coaches, when you have coaches that are like, you can't go out. No going out. No this, we're going to lock in. A kid isn't going to respond to that well, because most kids want to live a college life, like friends, going out. It's all about a balance.
Mhm.
That social life is all about a balance. Track and field, not even just track, football, basketball, baseball, swimming, all of these sports is hard. Like this is your job before you get into the real world and actually get a job. And when you take your job home, it hurts you.
There's man, there's so much in what you just said, because when you have a coach who tells you you can't do something, and how I hear it is the coach is telling me I can't be a human being.
Yeah.
I have to function within the confines of this sport, within this university, et cetera, et cetera. And this could be another podcast as far as like identity. Identity as an athlete, once you are in these spaces and you've done it for so long, and once you leave, it's like, then what? Because you've been conditioned to, all right, wake up, got breakfast, got training, got this, got that. Okay, we got to travel to track meet. It's just a constant. And then even like sometimes in the off season, you may have a few weeks off, and then all right, back into the grind. And I like the approach that you take as a coach. Is it's more of a collaborative type of coaching style where athletes can have a voice in this. When you said, sometimes I argue with my dad about workouts, I think that's healthy
Yeah,
because athletes should have some sort of voice in what they're doing. Because if it's one of those things, and some of it, this is from my own experiences, I've seen athletes to where they have no voice over their workout. And yes, coaches may know what's best for the athlete, but at least let the athlete say, "Hey, coach, I don't know. This really isn't feeling right," and then collaborate on that instead of you're in my system, you do what I say. That's not fun for anybody. And this can go outside of sports. Think about those who are listening and watching. Think about being in a work environment where your boss tells you when you can go to the restroom, when you can eat lunch, when you can go home, what type of work you can take home. And it's like, dang, you're really just like controlled. You have no life. So I think we could probably go for another 2 hours with this conversation, but I want to end this conversation as just forward thinking within the space of athlete mental health. So looking into the future, what would you like to see change within sports culture that makes athlete mental health just as important as athlete performance?
I would say at like coaches coaches asking questions about those things. I feel like they're kind of I feel like the rules are kind of a little shaky on it, but I feel like we need to start tearing down those walls of just leaving it up to the kids and stuff like that because most kids don't know what they want or how they want to go about things. So I think a coach, a veteran, if you have, let's say, you're my coach and you're a four-time Olympian, gold medalist, you've been through injury, you've bounced back, you've had all that, and then you go and you're coaching and you go and you ask a kid, well, how's your mental health? A simple question like that would just let a kid know, like, hey, he cares about me more than just an athlete. Most coaches don't ask, how's your mental health? How's you doing? How's your family doing? Asking those small questions means a lot to a kid, especially freshman, sophomore, new to the scene, don't really know what to expect or what's going on. I just feel like those type of questioning more, being more involved, and just not making mental health such a tabooish thing and making it so we want to stay away from that. No, like we want to make sure that I would say going forward, I would like to see mental health be treated differently than sports mental health. They're two different things, and I think that a lot of people get them confused as being one thing. No, your sports mental health is you ran a bad race. How are we going to move forward? What did you do within that bad race? You've had a couple bad races. Let's figure this out. Your mental health, the overall umbrella, like your sports mental health, falls underneath mental health as a whole. How is your life? How is it going? Like, what is home life like? How's your mom? How's your dad? The last time I spoke to you on the phone on the recruiting visit, but before you got here, your mom was in the hospital. How's she doing now? Is she okay? How's the family? And then we go into sports mental health, but we have to figure out this mental health thing. And then on top of that, we got to get more African American therapists inside of spaces where there are predominantly African American athletes. Going to like I shouldn't even though it's a PWI, I shouldn't just see one black therapist for a football team that's predominantly black. Like a predominantly black football team. I'm confused on why we only have one white woman talking to a whole bunch of grown black men. She can't relate to them. They can't relate. HBCU shouldn't just be the only schools with multiple black therapists because black athletes go to PWIs as well, and then especially those places that are not very color accepting. The Bamas where a black athlete could have a bad game and then instantly online he has a whole bunch of names, whole bunch of slurs and things like that. On top of him being called slurs by white kids on the campus and fans, he has to go to a white therapist and talk about stuff that white people are calling him. That doesn't even you can't like as you like we have to see that as a black athlete that doesn't get anywhere. You can't expect him to feel comfortable talking to somebody of the same color that's talking about him, and you won't get anywhere. Like you won't get anywhere. So
Man,
I would
preach,
say
preach.
getting black black therapists into spaces where you are predominantly seeing black athletes, and not if you don't want to put them into spaces, put them with those teams. If you have a predominantly black team, we need more black therapists. That's what we need. If a swim team is predominantly white, then that's fine. Like we can have white therapists there because they match. We don't have any representation anywhere, so we don't know where to go. We don't know where to go. I would say those are the two things that, seeing moving forward, I want to see change within the sport that help with the therapists and getting them in and multiple, just not just one, multiple. It shouldn't take one athlete to 2-3 weeks to schedule a visit with one therapist. No, we need multiple. We need multiple in the sport. We need to put a lot more funding into that part of and this NCAA because I feel like it's a big thing and it will only help the programs. I think that a lot of people don't understand that your mental health will help programs like athletes. And when an athlete feels like they're cared about, they will perform better. It's just naturally how it is. Like they can wake up every day. Okay, I'm safe here. If I got a problem, I know who I could go to. That I gotta think this through. I gotta make tactical decisions on who I gotta go to. I shouldn't have to wait 2-3 weeks to talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. Nah, and I would say those are just keeping it simple. Those are the two. Those are the things.
Man, this is for me the highlight of this conversation. The last 5 minutes of this because that is something that I've continually brought up just within the spaces that I'm in. Piggybacking on everything that you just said, I agree with it. Why aren't there more therapists in team settings where the majority of the team, athletes of color, and there's white therapists? And there's no shade to white therapists. There are plenty of good white clinicians out there. But when it comes back to your point, if I'm an athlete, why that's who's getting racial slurs after a bad game, why do I want to, like you said, go to a therapist who looks like the same people who just called me a racial slur? Some of this is just, to me, it's like common sense, like, but I often wonder how much of this has to do with gatekeeping because it just blows my mind when I see different programs and you look through the whole profile of psychologists, therapists, etc., and you see one or two therapists of color, and I'm just like, this makes no sense at all. So I agree 120% with you that there needs to be more of us in these spaces to be able to help athletes of color feel more comfortable, and also just knocking down the barriers and the stigmas when it comes to mental health. Sometimes it can be, as an athlete, I've heard this before of I go to this white clinician, I feel like I'm judged. I'm like, so that's the piece where it's just like sometimes the understanding or the barrier of understanding the culture, that's where it can be a detriment to an athlete's mental well-being and their performance. So this conversation, man, Coach Lawrence, I appreciate everything that you're doing out there. I appreciate you being able to be in a space, a leader among men and women, collegiate athletic space, to where you are providing voices, where you are providing a space where athletes are seen, heard, and understood. I can't thank you enough because we need more coaches out there like you who open up those spaces and say, you know what? It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to have a bad performance. I'm not going to judge you for that because we're all human beings in that space. And then the other part is you taking the time to understand the athlete. And I think when it comes to wanting to build a culture of safety and wanting to build a successful culture, having a coach that understands his or her athletes, there's nothing but benefits to that. So again, I appreciate you coming on Coaching Conversation and sharing your perspective as a coach and as an athlete.
Thank you for having me. I love to have these conversations because as a new coach, you're kind of boxed on what you can say. You don't really want to get X'd out for speaking too much. So just giving the platform to finally open up and speak, you'll be surprised on how many coaches will think the same way I'm thinking. Just haven't been able to say it just because they don't want to lose where they're at. Me, I don't really care too much to lose where I'm at. I mean, if I'm helping future generations of people with their mental health, so be it. It's so many people that's walked away from from sports just because of their mental health, how they were feeling, how they were treated, the fact that they didn't have anybody, and a bunch of people just left the sport. Talented people, I know a bunch of them. Talented people didn't feel like they had enough voice in anything or didn't have any help to voice themselves, and they just left. And it's a shame because it's very talented. There's a lot of talent lost in a lot of sports in a lot of areas just based off of mental health, and we got to change that.
I agree. If you're listening to Coats and Conversation on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube page. But more importantly, leave a comment below. Let me know what was your favorite part on this episode. If you're listening to Coats and Conversation on Apple or Spotify, be sure to share this episode with another athlete or with another coach. I think as Coach Lawrence laid out, there are a lot of coaches out there. There are a lot of athletes out there that want to speak up about some of these issues. But there are times where we can't have a voice because we're either shunned for speaking about how we feel, or secondly, we lose the position that we're in for speaking about things that are pretty apparent, but a lot of people want to turn a blind eye to these things. Again, I thank you for tuning in to Coats and Conversation, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did.